The unbreakable spirit. The crystalline mines of Proxima VI glowed with an eerie purple light, casting strange shadows across Maya's face as she pushed her hover cart loaded with raw crystals through the winding tunnels. At 14, she was already considered one of the most reliable workers in the Zarkak's mining operation, though that distinction meant little among slaves. Her small frame allowed her to navigate the narrower tunnels where adult humans couldn't fit, and her quick mind helped her memorize the complex route system that even some of the alien overseers struggled with. Maya wiped sweat from her brow with a grimy sleeve, careful not to let any of the precious crystals fall from her cart. The Zarkaks were not known for their forgiveness, and she still bore scars from previous lessons in careful handling of their resources. The mining facility was a maze of technological marvels and primitive cruelty. Anti-gravity lifts next to chain gangs, energy shields alongside whips. As she approached intersection K-17, something unusual caught her attention. The normally sealed doorway to Section X was slightly ajar, and strange sounds echoed from within. Not the usual mechanical hums and whirs, but something alive, something in pain. Maya knew she should continue her assigned route. Section X was strictly forbidden to slaves, and the punishment for entering would be severe. But something about those sounds pulled at her, awakening memories of her own first days in captivity, when she too had cried out in pain and fear. With practiced silence, she secured her hover cart in a maintenance alcove and crept toward the door. The gap was just wide enough for her slight frame to slip through. Inside, banks of strange equipment lined the walls, their displays showing incomprehensible alien text and diagrams. But it was the center of the room that made her gasp. A creature unlike anything Maya had ever seen was suspended in a containment field. It appeared to be made of living crystal, its form shifting between solid and translucent, with facets that caught and reflected the purple light of the mines. Its core pulsed with internal energy, and its crystalline features were contorted in what could only be described as agony. As Maya watched, a Zarkak scientist approached the creature with a device that sent arcs of energy through its crystalline body, causing it to shudder and emit a high-pitched keening sound that made Maya's teeth ache. The scientist made notes on a datapad, completely unmoved by the creature's suffering. Another failure. A harsh voice spoke from the shadows. The subject continues to resist integration with the mining system. Perhaps we should increase the voltage. Maya's hands clenched into fists. She recognized that voice. Belonged to Overseer Krell, notorious even among the cruel Zarkaks for his sadistic experiments. She had seen him testing new control devices on human slaves, always pushing the limits of how much pain they could endure. The crystalline being's eyes, if they could be called eyes, met Maya's. In that moment, she felt something she couldn't explain, a connection that transcended physical form. The creature's pain echoed in her mind, but there was something else too, a sense of vast intelligence and ancient knowledge. Without conscious thought, Maya's hand moved to the pocket of her tattered coveralls, where she kept her most precious possession, a small crystal she had found in the deepest part of the mines, one that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. She had kept it hidden, knowing the Zarkaks would take it if they found it. Now, as she touched it, it grew warm, and the crystalline being's glow intensified slightly. The scientist turned toward a bank of controls, and Maya knew she had to leave before she was discovered. But as she slipped back through the door, she made a silent promise. She would find a way to help this creature. The Zarkaks had taught her well that power came from controlling others, but Maya had learned a different lesson from her fellow slaves. True strength came from helping each other survive. Back at her hover cart, Maya's mind raced with possibilities. She had access to the maintenance tunnels, knowledge of the facility's layout, and most importantly, she had something the Zarkaks didn't seem to understand: an empathic connection with the crystalline being. For the first time since her capture 3 years ago, Maya felt something dangerous beginning to grow in her heart. Hope. But hope was just the beginning. As she resumed her rounds, Pushing her cart through the familiar tunnels, Maya began to plan. She would need help, timing, and most of all, she would need to understand what the crystal in her pocket meant, because in that brief connection with the creature, she had sensed something that changed everything. The Zarkax weren't experimenting on their prisoner to control it. They were afraid of it, and maybe, just maybe, they had reason to be. Breaking chains. For 3 days, Maya watched and waited. She volunteered for extra shifts, mapped guard rotations, and most importantly, studied the mysterious crystal she carried. At night, in the cramped darkness of her sleeping pod, she would hold it up to the dim emergency lights, watching how it seemed to pulse in rhythm with her own heartbeat. The crystal had changed since their encounter with the imprisoned being. It now emitted a faint warmth, and sometimes, when Maya concentrated hard enough, she could feel whispers of thoughts that weren't her own. Fragments of memories filled with starlight and vast crystalline cities that stretched across entire worlds. During her working hours, Maya carefully gathered intelligence. She learned that the Zarkax called their prisoner a crystalline sentinel, one of an ancient race that had once served as guardians of the galaxy's most powerful energy sources. The scientists spoke of it with a mixture of fear and greed, seeing it as both a threat and a potential key to unlocking unprecedented power. What they didn't know, what Maya had discovered through her growing connection with both crystals, was that the Sentinel was dying. The Zarkax experiments were slowly shattering its core structure, and with it millennia of accumulated knowledge and power would be lost forever. On the 4th night, everything changed. Maya was awakened by an intense burning sensation from her crystal. In her mind, clear as day, she heard words. "The time is now, little one. The alignment approaches." Maya slipped from her pod, heart pounding. The night shift was the smallest, and she knew exactly how to reach Section X through the maintenance tunnels. What she didn't expect was to find someone waiting for her in the shadows. "I wondered when you'd make your move," came a whispered voice. It was Sarah, one of the adult workers who had always shown Maya kindness. "I've seen you watching, planning. Whatever you're going to do, I want to help." Maya hesitated only a moment before nodding. Sarah had access to the environmental controls. They might need that. Together, they moved through the darkness, using Maya's perfect recall of the guard patterns to avoid detection. Section X was quiet except for the soft hum of containment fields. The Sentinel's glow had dimmed significantly since Maya had first seen it, but as she approached, it brightened slightly. Sarah gasped at the sight, but kept watch at the door. "The alignment," Maya whispered, approaching the control panel. "What does it mean?" The response came not in words but in images, crystals resonating together, power flowing, barriers shattering. Maya understood. Her small crystal wasn't just a piece of mineral. It was a key, and the time had come to use it. She reached for the control panel, but before she could touch it, alarms blared to life. "Intruder alert in Section X," an automated voice announced. "Security protocols engage." "Maya, run," Sarah shouted, but Maya stood her ground. She knew what she had to do. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her crystal and held it high. The Sentinel's glow intensified, and Maya felt power surge through her body. The crystal in her hand grew hot, almost burning, but she didn't let go. Energy coursed between the crystal and the Sentinel, creating a web of light that filled the room. Security doors slammed shut as heavy footsteps approached. Sarah worked frantically at a side panel, trying to override the lockdown. "Whatever you're going to do, do it fast." The crystal in Maya's hand shattered, but instead of falling as fragments, it dissolved into pure energy that flowed into the containment field. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the field itself began to crack, lines of light spreading across its surface like a spiderweb. The Sentinel's voice filled Maya's mind. "Together, little one. Your will, my power. Show them what humans and Sentinels can do when they trust each other." Maya closed her eyes and pushed with everything she had. All her anger at the Zarkax, all her hope for freedom, all her determination to save this magnificent being. The containment field exploded in a burst of crystalline light, just as the security forces burst through the door. What happened next would become legend among the slaves of Proxima Vui. The Sentinel, free of its prison, grew to tower over the Zarkak's guards. Its crystalline body rippled with power, but instead of attacking, it reached out to Maya with a tendril of pure energy. "Take my hand, brave one," it said in her mind. "Let me show you what real power looks like. Not the power to control, but the power to transform." Maya reached out, her fingers meeting living crystal. Light exploded around them, and for a moment, she understood everything. The nature of the universe, the history of the Sentinels, and most importantly, why the Zarkaks were so afraid. Because humans, it seemed, had a unique ability to connect with and channel the Sentinels' power, an ability that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Sarah watched in awe as Maya's body began to crystallize, not as imprisonment, but as transformation. The security forces fell back in terror as girl and Sentinel became something new, something that represented both the best of humanity and the ancient power of the crystal beings. The revolution was about to begin, and it would start with a 14-year-old girl who dared to show compassion to a creature everyone else feared. Crystal Revolution. News of Maya's transformation spread through the mining complex like wildfire. The Zarkaks tried to lock down all communications, but they couldn't stop the whispers, the hope that traveled from one slave barracks to another. They had all seen the light show from Section X, felt the tremors that shook the facility's foundations, and now they knew. A human child had done the impossible. Maya herself was still adjusting to her new form. Her body shimmered between solid and crystalline states, responsive to her thoughts. The Sentinel, who she now knew as Arxos, had become both her teacher and partner. Together, they moved through the maintenance tunnels of the facility, gathering allies and preparing for what was to come. The Zarkaks built their empire on stolen power, Arxos explained as they watched guards rushing through the main corridors. They found our ancient outposts, our sleeping chambers, and instead of learning from us, they chose to imprison and exploit. Sarah had become their chief organizer, using her knowledge of the facility's systems to coordinate between different groups of slaves. "The overseers are panicking," she reported during one secret meeting. "They've called for reinforcements, but their nearest battle fleet is 3 days away." Maya touched the wall of the tunnel, feeling the vibrations of the facility through her crystalline fingers. "We don't have 3 days. They're planning something desperate." Her new senses could detect energy fluctuations throughout the complex, and something about the patterns worried her. She was right. That night, the Zarkaks began their countermove. Overseer Krell's voice boomed through the facility's communication system. "Attention, human slaves. Your choice is simple. Return to your assigned duties, and we will show mercy. Resist, and we will overload the facility's power core. None of you will survive." But the Zarkaks had miscalculated. Through her connection with the facility's crystals, Maya had already discovered something they had kept hidden even from themselves. The power core they threatened to overload wasn't just a power source. It was another Sentinel, one they had captured centuries ago and built their facility around. "They don't understand what they're doing," Arxos said gravely. "Attempting to overload a Sentinel of that age, it wouldn't just destroy the facility. It could shatter this entire moon." Maya stood up, her crystalline form casting rainbow reflections on the tunnel walls. "Then we have to free it, not just for us, but for everyone." She turned to the gathered slaves, their faces lit by her gentle glow. "I need volunteers." What happened next demonstrated why the Zarkaks had made a fatal error in underestimating humans. Within hours, Maya had assembled a team that combined different skills and knowledge. Former engineers who understood the facility's systems, maintenance workers who knew every shortcut and access panel, even kitchen staff who could predict guard rotations based on meal schedules. They developed a plan that was both elegant and audacious. While Maya and Arxos would lead a direct assault on the main control room, a spectacular light show to draw attention and resources, other teams would move through the facility, disrupting systems and freeing more slaves. But the key team, led by Sarah, would make their way to the central power core. As they prepared to move, Maya addressed the gathered rebels. Her voice, now carrying a slight crystalline resonance, filled the maintenance tunnel. The Zarkax think they understand power. They see it as something to be taken, controlled, used. But true power comes from connection, from working together, from choosing to help others even when it's dangerous. She held out her hand, demonstrating how her human flesh could shift to living crystal and back again. This gift I've received, this connection with Arxos, it's not just about physical power. It's about understanding. And what I understand now is that humans have something special, something the Zarkax fear. The ability to adapt, to empathize, to join together despite our differences. The rebels moved out according to plan, but as with all battles, chaos quickly took hold. The Zarkax had automated defense systems they hadn't counted on, and soon the air was filled with the sound of energy weapons and the cries of the wounded. But even this had been anticipated. Former medical workers moved among the rebels, treating injuries and pulling people to safety. Maya and Arxos fought their way toward the control room, their combined powers allowing them to deflect energy bolts and disable security systems. But with each step, Maya could feel the power core's increasing instability. The Zarkax weren't bluffing. They had already begun the overload sequence. Through their connection, she sensed Arxos's growing concern. The other sentinel is awakening, he communicated. If we cannot reach it in time. Maya cut him off, her determination flowing through their bond. We will. We have to. She paused, touching a nearby wall to check on Sarah's team's progress. Because sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't ancient crystal beings or advanced technology. She smiled as she felt Sarah's team reach their destination. Sometimes it's just people, working together, refusing to be broken. The facility's lights flickered, and a deep rumble shook the foundations. The battle for the power core was about to begin, and with it, the fate of not just the slaves, but the entire moon hung in the balance. Maya squared her shoulders, her crystalline form glowing brighter with resolve. This was what all her planning, all her careful observation had led to. It was time to show the Zarkax why humans were never meant to be slaves. Power unleashed. The central power chamber was a cathedral of crystal and light, built around a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with barely contained energy. Sarah's team had fought their way through 3 security checkpoints to reach it, and now they stared in awe at what they'd found. The imprisoned sentinel was enormous, its crystalline form extending through multiple levels of the facility. By all the stars, Sarah whispered, watching energy patterns ripple through the ancient being. They built their whole operation around imprisoning this creature. Warning klaxons blared as the overload sequence continued. The chamber's walls thrummed with dangerous levels of power, and diagnostic displays flashed urgent warnings in Zarkax script. Through her comm unit, Sarah heard Maya's voice, now tinged with a crystalline resonance. We're almost at the control room. How bad is it? Sarah watched as one of her team's engineers, Marcus, worked at a control panel. Bad, he reported. They've locked out most systems. The power levels are approaching critical and... He ducked as a surge of energy crackled overhead. The containment fields are starting to fail. The imprisoned sentinel's glow intensified, and Sarah felt a deep vibration in her bones. The creature was awakening, and after centuries of imprisonment, its first reaction would likely be rage. Meanwhile, Maya and Arxos had reached the main control room, but found themselves facing Overseer Krell and his elite guard. The Overseer's usual cold composure had cracked, revealing the fear beneath. You don't understand what you're doing, he snarled. That being in the core isn't just a power source. It's a weapon. One that could have won us the galaxy. Maya's crystalline form shimmered as she deflected an energy blast. "No, you're the one who doesn't understand. The Sentinels weren't meant to be weapons. They were guardians, teachers." She reached out with her powers, feeling the facility's systems through its crystalline components. "And you've spent centuries torturing one for your own gain." Arxes moved in perfect synchronization with Maya, their combined powers creating shields of crystalline energy. "The humans have shown us something your kind never could, Krell. They understand partnership, true cooperation. It's why Maya could join with me, while you could only cage us." The battle in the control room was fierce, but Maya had learned quickly how to use her new abilities. Where the Zarkax relied on brute force and advanced technology, she and Arxes moved like dancers, their powers complementing each other in ways that made them far more effective than either would be alone. But time was running out. Through her connection to the facility's crystals, Maya could feel the power core approaching critical levels. The imprisoned Sentinel's awakening was causing cascading failures throughout the facility's systems. In the power chamber, Sarah's team worked desperately to slow the overload while avoiding the increasing energy discharges. The ancient Sentinel's crystalline surface had begun to crack, lines of blinding light shining through. "Maya," Sarah called through the comm, "whatever you're going to do it fast. This whole place is about to blow." In the control room, Maya finally reached the main console, but as she interfaced with it, she realized the horrible truth. They've locked it down completely. There's no way to stop the overload from here. She turned to Arxes, their shared understanding flowing through their bond. "We have to do it directly." Without waiting for a response, Maya opened a channel to all rebels. "Everyone who can, get to the surface. Get as far from the facility as you can." She paused, her voice softening. "Sarah, you too. You've done enough." "Maya, no." Sarah started to protest, but Maya cut her off. "Trust me," she said, her voice carrying the weight of certainty. "I finally understand why I could connect with the crystals, why humans have this ability. We're going to show everyone what that really means." Maya and Arxes fought their way to the power chamber, arriving just as the ancient Sentinel's containment field failed completely. The being's awakening sent pulses of power through the facility that overloaded systems and shattered lesser crystals. Its consciousness, twisted by centuries of pain and imprisonment, lashed out indiscriminately. But Maya stepped forward, her partly crystalline form glowing with its own light. She reached out both physically and mentally, establishing a connection not just with Arxes, but with the ancient Sentinel as well. "We're not here to control you," she projected. "We're here to help, to understand, to free you." The ancient being's power pressed against her mind, filled with rage and pain accumulated over centuries. But where the Zarkax had tried to contain this power, Maya opened herself to it. She let the Sentinel feel her own experiences of imprisonment, of maintaining hope in the darkness, of finding strength in cooperation rather than control. Arxes joined the connection, adding his own understanding of humanity's potential. Together, they created something unprecedented, a three-way bridge between human adaptability, Sentinel power, and the wisdom of ages. The chamber filled with light as energy levels reached their peak. But instead of destruction, the power began to flow in new patterns, guided by the unique combination of human empathy and Sentinel knowledge. The facility's systems, designed to cage and control, began to transform into something entirely new. In that moment of connection, Maya understood that this was never just about freeing slaves or defeating the Zarkax. It was about showing the galaxy a new way forward, one where different species could work together, learn from each other, and become something greater than the sum of their parts. The light grew blinding, and the very foundations of Proxima Vii began to shift. The revolution was about to enter its final phase, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be quite the same. Legacy of Light. 3 days after what would become known as the Awakening, the survivors gathered on the transformed surface of Proxima Vii. Where there had once been a brutal mining facility, now stood a gleaming city of living crystal, its spires reaching toward the stars like hands stretched toward hope. The structure pulsed with gentle light, a physical manifestation of the harmony between human and sentinel. Maya stood at its heart, her form now able to shift seamlessly between human and crystalline states. Around her, other humans were discovering their own connections to the crystal technology, each in their own unique way. Sarah had found she could communicate with the city's systems, her former knowledge of the facility's operations translating into an intuitive understanding of its new form. The Zarkax never understood what they had, Arxos observed, his crystalline form shimmering in the light of the system's distant sun. They sought to imprison us, to drain our power, but in doing so they brought us together with the very species that could help us evolve. The ancient sentinel, who had revealed its name as Kronos, had transformed the facility's power core into a new kind of nexus, one that served as both power source and teaching center. Through it, humans were learning the true history of the galaxy and the role the Sentinels had played as guardians of knowledge and balance. "They're coming," Marcus announced, looking up from a console that now displayed information in both human and crystalline scripts. 3 Zarkax battle fleets just entered the system. Maya nodded, unsurprised. "Let them come." She turned to address the gathered crowd, her voice carrying easily through the crystalline chambers. "What we've built here isn't just a refuge, it's a message, a demonstration of what's possible when we choose understanding over control, cooperation over dominance." The city itself seemed to respond to her words, its lights brightening. Through their shared connection, Maya could feel the excitement and apprehension of both humans and sentinels. The next few moments would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of galactic civilization. The Zarkax fleet appeared in the sky above, their ships dark and angular in contrast to the gleaming crystal city below. Their weapons powered up, energy readings spiking on the city's sensors. But before they could fire, something extraordinary happened. Maya, Arxos, and Kronos joined their powers, creating a display that could be seen from orbit. The city projected images into space, not just of the rebellion and transformation, but of everything that had led to this moment. The centuries of imprisonment, the casual cruelty, and most importantly, the power of choice that had changed everything. "Your weapons cannot harm us," Maya's voice transmitted to the fleet, accompanied by a crystalline harmony from the Sentinels. "But we invite you to learn from us instead, to understand what your ancestors never could." The response came from the Zarkax fleet commander himself, his voice tight with controlled fury. "You speak of understanding, but you've stolen our greatest asset, corrupted our power source." "No," Maya interrupted, her tone firm but not unkind. "We've shown you its true potential. Look around you. The energy output of this city is 10 times what your facility ever managed, and it's clean, sustainable, freely given rather than stolen." Through their shared connection, the Sentinels added their own message. "For millennia, we searched for a species that could truly partner with us, help us grow beyond our crystalline limitations. In humanity's capacity for adaptation, empathy, and growth, we found what we sought. You can be part of this future, or you can stand against the tide of change. The choice, as always, is yours." Hours passed as the standoff continued, but gradually, surprisingly, something shifted. Individual Zarkax ships began powering down their weapons. Some even requested permission to send observers. The Crystal City had become a beacon, proof that there was another way. In the days and weeks that followed, word spread throughout the galaxy. Other enslaved populations rose up, aided by humans who had learned to connect with crystal technology. More sentinels awakened from ancient resting places, no longer fearing exploitation but seeking partnership with humanity. Maya remained at the heart of it all, no longer just a former slave, but a bridge between species, a living example of what was possible. The 14-year-old who had once been considered property had helped spark a transformation that would reshape galactic society. One evening, as Proxima Vii's sun set and the Crystal City glowed with internal light, Sarah found Maya standing on one of the higher spires. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked, gesturing at the breathtaking view below, where humans and even some Zarkax now walked together through gardens of crystal flowers that sang in the wind. Maya smiled, letting her form shift slightly to catch and reflect the fading sunlight. "I imagined freedom," she said softly. "But this is something better. We're not just free. We're building something new, something that's never existed before." Arxos and Kronos joined them, their crystalline forms harmonizing with the city's pulse. "And that," Arxos observed, "is humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. Not just the ability to adapt and change, but to help others do the same. To show that liberation isn't just about breaking chains, it's about growing beyond them." As night fell and stars appeared above the crystal spires, the city hummed with possibility. The revolution hadn't just freed the slaves of Proxima VI. It had started a cascade of changes that would continue for generations. And at its heart was a simple truth that even the Zarkax were beginning to understand. True power doesn't come from control or domination, but from the connections we choose to make and the bridges we dare to build. Maya's gift hadn't just been her ability to connect with the Sentinels. It had been her courage to show compassion when others chose fear, to seek understanding when others sought control. In doing so, she had helped create something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. A future where different species could learn from each other, grow together, and become more than anyone had imagined possible.